Hello, everyone, and welcome to another in our series of interviews for the Southall FC Independent Supporters Association YouTube channel. And our special guest today is former Southall assistant manager Warren Goodhind. So, welcome, Warren. How are you?
Hello, Mark. Yeah, all good, mate. Thanks for having us on.
No, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. So, Warren, you were assistant manager at Southall from 2018 until 2022. But prior to that, you played for Barnet, Cambridge United, Rochdale, Oxford United, Ebbsfleet United, Harrow Borough, Eastleigh, Hemel Hempstead Town, and Thurrock. And you played in the 2002 LDV Vans Trophy final at the Millennium Stadium during your time at Cambridge. So, looking back at your playing career, what would you say are some of your highlights?
Oof, it's such a long time ago. Feels like a completely different lifetime, to be honest. Um, I suppose the generic answer is your sort of professional debut. My time at Barnet, it'll always be home because that's where I came through the YTS ranks and spent 4 years as a pro there. The YTS, with the pros that were around us at that time, was very different. It was that sort of mid-90s era. Football was obviously different back then, but just brilliant. The YT boys that I was with, the nine of us, it's quite unique because those boys are all still in touch, and we have regular catch-ups, and it's something that was special. So that time doing the YTS, which was a real learning curve, but a lot of fun at the same time, into obviously your professional debut. And my whole time at Barnet was just played in some really good teams with some brilliant players, who had very good careers at all different levels. And then obviously there was some very good times at Cambridge as well. It sort of became a second home in theory. Played in a very good team under John Taylor there, again with some brilliant players. And so there's lots of different things really that you could take. You always remember, as I said, your debut, scoring your first goal. We got to the playoffs in my first full year as a professional at Barnet. That was, that then carries bits with it, the sort of, we managed to get away on holiday as part of our success this year and all those things. So your first sort of holiday with your mates and think just many, many different things. But I think the thing that you always miss day to day is just the dressing rooms. And I was lucky to be in some brilliant dressing rooms, with some big characters.
And that final in 2002 at the Millennium Stadium,
Yeah.
obviously, bittersweet because you lost the game, but must have been an amazing experience to, okay, it wasn't Wembley Stadium, it was a Millennium Stadium, but still, what was that experience like? Can you remember that?
It was. I can remember sort of the whole weekend, the build up to it. I hadn't really had a great that was the year that I joined Cambridge in October. And I didn't really settle very well there at all. So it had been a bit of a sort of tricky introduction, to be honest. And that team actually struggled that year in League One. We actually got relegated, but to go alongside that, we managed to get to that LDV final. So Blackpool were the better team on the day. They thoroughly deserved their victory. But to get that opportunity to play in that massive stadium, and there was a good support there that day as well from both sides. So again, you carry those bits, didn't you? Got a silver medal, as they say, hanging somewhere on a wall. So yeah, memories of the whole experience, and to be fair, that sort of run set that team up nicely for the following year with a few additions. As I said, that was a very good team to play in that following year. And that was probably one of the better teams that I played in throughout my career. So yeah, bittersweet, but yeah, something to be special. It would have been more special had it been Wembley. Unfortunately, it was being built. So just missed Wembley on a couple of occasions, but there you go.
And you were appointed as assistant to Max Howell at Southall in 2018. But what had you been doing in that interim period between when you finished playing and when you joined Southall?
So I actually finished the last year I played was at Harlow Town. That was 38, and just at the back end of that, it was the travelling and stuff. It was time, I'd sort of stepped away from it a couple of times, but always come back to it. So 38 to, I think I did a couple of years where I really wasn't around it at all. I've been working in schools and sort of have built like a little Saturday morning football coaching sort of, don't want to say clinic, but like a little soccer school type thing. And I've really been doing that. And then I was watching games, went down to Wealdstone to watch quite a bit because I was obviously in that area. And I'd just go and catch games down to Eastleigh, go and see different people. And then just the year before, me and Max, because obviously we worked together, both decided that we were going to jump on our B license with Richard Graham, who was another lad that I played with, but then came along to the club a few years later as well. And we just ended up sort of doing that. And then it sort of just evolved. We'd been on that. We was a year down the line. We got that completed. And then next thing I know, obviously I'm having a chat with Max and he's going, do you fancy having a go at this?
When was it literally like that? He said, "Oh, I've got the job at Southall. Do you want to come with me?" Or was there a bit more to it than that?
No, no, no. That's that. I mean, Max as well as me, and that is Max to a T. I know he'd been involved there previously. He played, and then obviously he'd done an assistant role, and then he was having a chat, obviously with Bobby, and he was like, "Do you want to come sit down and let's have a conversation?" And I was all over it, just purely because it was Max, and no, we knew who he is and what he's about. I thought it would be great for us to dive into it and see where we go.
And Southall had won Division One of the Spartan South Midlands League the season before. So going in the following season, what were the expectations?
I think it's always, people, like, again, it's generic. Say, it's staying up, see where you can go. I know when we went in, people outside the club had this ridiculous idea that the club was backed financially, to the hilt, this, that, and all the rest of it. And I know that they had, facilitated a few players to try and get that push the year before. But it was nothing like people were saying. So it was, we can run with this. That's not a problem, and it's not going to be an issue for us to get where we need to be. But it was a complete rebuild, and I think that was what was kind of exciting about it. It was me stepping back into something I hadn't been around for a long time, non-league football. I hadn't been anywhere near since I was like 15, 16. Obviously, Max was in that, but it was something I wanted to do with him. So that kind of was the ball, and then meeting Bobby and Bob, and then Artesh as well, and it was like these people seem like they really want to have a go, and they're going to back it to do it. So, and they did, but it was a lot of ducking and diving, and a lot of pulling in people in for different reasons, to be honest.
So Max was manager, and you were sort of assistant manager, senior coach. So how did your role work alongside what Max was doing?
Well, we had. I mean, he was very good with it, Max, and I think that'll be a running theme when you speak to people that were part of that and have been part of what he's done. Is we got good people around us. Briggsy and Don. And been there previously. We had some couple of senior players that sort of he kept around it as well. But then it was the pull of bringing in, like Frank was a massive piece of that with the goalkeeping. Once he joined, we had Richard a bit further down the line. Just people that with good values and good morals and wanted to do things the right way. So my role within that really was obviously working with Max on. Max did all the recruitment. He knew people. He knew the right type of people that he wanted to get around it. He knew what he wanted to build behind the scenes. And then for me, it was whatever he needed, really. The coaching side of it, implemented what we wanted to do, making sessions that people were going to enjoy, that became a bit more professional, as far as we could get it. And then just trying to give us some sort of idea and structure as to what we wanted to do. So really anything that he asked, that was always going to be my role.
And you were at Southall from 2018 until the early part of 2022. Looking back on that time that you had at Southall, again, same question as before, really. What would you pick out as some of the highlights, and what did you enjoy the most about that role?
I think, again, alluding to things, from my previous lifetime in football, it was building the dressing room, and we knew that, training on a Thursday and games on a Saturday were just going to be good days. Even when we had the poor results and stuff, it was the dressing room that he built. It was first year we had a good go, and that was the first full season that we did. And then obviously, we had lots of things that we had to learn on the go, as you like. Second year round, I think we had almost like a change around of nearly half the squad after about 2 months. Again, something that was new to both of us, trying to facilitate that, because we weren't where we needed to be, and there hadn't been a massive progression from the first year. That sort of picked up, and then obviously got cut short with the COVID first time round. So we sort of were sitting in a good position. We knew we were always going to be up and around the top, and I think for us as management, it was, consolidate, great, but no, we want to be up here. Ultimately we want to win it, and if we get playoffs, we get playoffs. But we didn't want to be anywhere outside that. So the third year again got cut short. So it was like we was getting going always, and then it didn't quite work. But then obviously into that fourth year, it just gathered pace, and it just never stopped. It was a brilliant dressing room. It was unique, a lot of strong characters in there, but they were a group that was as close knit off the pitch as they were on the pitch. And I think fundamentally it was, like I said, it'd be very difficult to ever replicate that. It just come together. There was a lot of ability in there. In Max's credit, he had players that should have been playing higher, who could have earned a lot more money playing higher as well. But they wanted to play. They wanted to play for him, and the success of that year speaks for itself. And the following year, how well they did in that. It wasn't just again a consolidation; it was a push again. So it tells its own story.
And you mentioned COVID. I wanted to ask you about that. What was that like for you as a, assistant to Max, as a coach? All sorts of challenges that come with that. It must have been a weird situation to be in.
Yeah, and I think, we've always said, like, you're never too high, never too low. You just sort of running game to game, and you just sort of roll with the punches. That's literally how we took it. I can remember I can't remember where I think we played at Ascot on the Saturday, and that was a great game. And then I remember getting a phone call from him on the Sunday, and he was like, "You're not going to believe this, but X, Y, Z, and we think there's COVID flying about." And I'd just been away, a couple of weeks before in Barcelona, and there was talk of it there and everything being shut down, and just literally never thought this is actually going to happen. And then next thing you know, it's like I've got 2 months off, 3 months off. I'm sitting in the garden and the sun's out, and it's just done. So it was very surreal. And then obviously to get going the next year, sort of year through the summer pre-season, get up and running again, and then to have it all shut down again was just. But it was, you got to control the controllables, right? There was nothing we could do with that. We'd done everything as we could to be going game to game, getting to where we wanted to be, where we knew the club wanted to be. And then there's nothing you can do. So you just get on, and we move to the next. The next thing you know, we're back in the next season, and we're actually going this time. So, maybe it helped us to give us that time to build. Who knows what would have happened in those second and third year, but it gave us time to sort of, make all the mistakes and learn all the lessons that you might have needed as a manager, and as a team. So it was what it was. I think it worked to our advantage in the end. And I think, like I said, the success that the team had that following year and the year after speaks volumes of it. So,
And you mentioned obviously at Southall there were good players, and you talked about the dressing room being good, some good characters. So, do you want to pick out? I know this is a difficult question in some regards, but do you want to sort of pick out some of the players that stood out for you in terms of what they did, their character, what it was that they were doing and helping the other players and that sort of thing?
I think when you look at teams, you can't have a squad, or you couldn't have an 11 that are all the same. I don't think it works, and I'm fortunate enough to do stuff now where you're talking to younger players about, different pieces of the puzzle. You need your, goalkeeper was a key one. We were very fortunate that year with Barks in goal. He'd been with us. Obviously, again, he was one that Max had retained from when he was both playing and when he was assistant. Just people, the phrases change now in football, don't they? But big players in big moments. And he certainly was one of those. His character was very unique, very much, very calm, very composed, but a presence in everything that he did. We had good defenders, reliable defenders that would do their job, were consistent in what they did. Good fullbacks that would get on the ball and play how we wanted to play. A rotation of midfielders, people that came at different periods through the year, and we had goal scorers, people that came and just it gelled into the unit. People who've been around it, who scored goals at different levels. People will allude to that we sort of had a bit of a team of misfits at the time as well, but they weren't. They were just people that needed good man management, which was what Max gave them. And as I said, he unified the group. We had people who could score goals from nothing, who did score goals from free kicks, from distance, from just goal scorers. And when I left, which was very difficult at the time because of where we was and what I felt the club was going to achieve, the group they just kept going, and like I said, he had a squad which he heavily relied on through those last couple of months when people were limping over the line. But it was like them and us. It was us against the world to a degree, because there was a lot of outside noise, and it only bonded the group even more so. So it's hard to pick out individuals. They ran literally from, like I said, from back to front.
And your final season at Southall, went really well, and you alluded to it there. And the team went on to reach the FA Vase quarter final, finished runners up in the Combined Counties Premier. And you left, I think it was in the February of that year. You got offered a coaching role in the US. So how did that role come about? And was that a difficult decision to leave and go out there?
Um, it was an opportunity that had been sort of in the offing for a couple of years, for a change of direction, just in general, from everyday work life change, different country, different environment, an opportunity to just coach football full time. Um, the timing wasn't ideal. I think originally it was meant to be the summer before, but there have been a lot of, obviously, with the COVID stuff that pushed things back. And then it just very quickly happened, got pushed through. In America, they run slightly different. So they have with sort of the youth side of things, which I went into when I first went there. They run off of like a spring season, and they have a fall season. So they have sort of breaks down rather than a 12-month period. And it sort of got pushed through, and there've been a lot of investment from their side to get me there as quick as possible. And so, yes, it was very difficult, but it just rolled so quick. And probably the thing, it was always there for me to do personally, but then I was in this situation where we were as the club, and it was the hardest thing to do. Because I've been in it for so long. I wanted to try and see it through, and that was always the intention: see it through, see if we can get there, and then that would be the right timing to go. So it was very difficult, yeah.
So 3 years since then, what have you been up to since then, and what are you doing now?
So I did a couple of years in the States. Obviously, stayed in touch with everything. That sort of finished that season was made up for everybody. It was a lot of hard work, but the group in particular, as I said, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, the lads on the pitch and the squad together, they saw it through, and they got that across the line. So it was super proud of that. But I can't speak highly enough of all of them. Incredibly gutted to have missed those celebrations, but I managed to catch a few of them, and then came back. Been back nearly 18 months now. Spent a bit of time when I got back, sort of just having a bit of time off, to be honest, and then sort of stepped back into the intention of coming back was to try and step back into full-time somewhere with an academy piece. My qualifications in America were great for me to be in America, but it works very differently here in England, as I think most people know. I was very fortunate when I got back to step straight into an A license. So I've just spent the last year doing that whilst working in at Watford's academy with the under 14s. So I've just completed that first year, which again is another massive learning curve for me. And then when I can, obviously, I've tried to catch games, and I've gone back to do some work with the company that I was with previously, because obviously both sort of facilitate me being able to do that. So yeah, it's strange to think it was that long ago since I left, but like a lot has happened since. But the club obviously have done great. Now we see another step with the obviously move to Hazen Yedin. And I know there's, that being back on the sort of same postcode is a massive piece of that. I see that the transfer window has been impressive in everything as expected. So I look forward to getting down and seeing a few games.
And when you look back at your career in football as a player and your time as a coach at Southall, going out to the US and coaching out there, where does Southall fit into that? What's your sort of feeling about that experience?
Uh, it's right up there in every aspect. Playing is very different, and you'll always miss playing. Coaching is a lot harder. There's a lot more to it. Than maybe some people realize. There's a lot more detail in everything you do, and you can't quite affect it in the way you would like to when you could play. But them getting that promotion that year was probably up there with, it's hard because I was part of it, but I wasn't there at the end. So you feel that you take some credit, but you also don't as well, because, getting that final piece done was down to everybody that was still there. So, but massively proud of that and everything that we did. Stepping into Southall was at a good time for me as well. Like personally, in everything I was doing at that time, gave me a focus, gave me something to get my teeth back into. I'll be forever grateful for that. Sort of put me back in the coaching path, and probably something I should have done many, many years before, but never did. So, that kind of helped me to relaunch that side of things, which I'll continue to do. So yeah, that's right up there, with many, many things.
All right, well, Warren, it's been fantastic to speak to you and talk about your time at Southall. So thanks ever so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having us on. Like I said, I wish them all the best for this year, and look forward to catching up with you in person as well.